Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Gabs, our weekly discussion series where we talk about all the things that we would normally talk about in our group chat and bring it to you guys.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be discussing mini games in games, curse, blessing, bit of fun, hell on earth, all those things that they could be. And
know
just
what you're talking
generally
about,
how
man.
we all see them. What's
I like
that?
What's
mini
that?
games more than I like games. Are you for real?
What was that on
It's not even
Community?
been a minute. Why? I put lights in this room and everything.
So the thing is that Jack's camera is a mini game. You have to carefully balance your positioning to make it not blurry.
I don't know what I did.
And he's really bad at it.
Yeah,
So
bull.
So
Not
is
fair.
the topic mini games? Are they good or bad?
I think
Nicolas Cage, is
I
he
mean,
good
we're
or
talking
bad?
about we're talking about video games. One of us at the end of this is going to get up and do a Nicolas Cage impression, like Arbed. But no. So yeah, as always, we want to hear your thoughts on the topics, what we should discuss next, and how wrong our opinions are. All right, because I'm always right.
Our opinions are never wrong. What are you talking about?
Exactly, we are always
Especially
right,
when we
even
don't
disagree.
agree.
Exactly.
That's when our opinions are mostly correct.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, as usual, let's get our D20s, roll to see who starts this conversation.
I've got my weird Breaking Bad style meth with chili flakes dice. I don't know if you can really see it.
It really just looks like white.
No, well,
I can see.
I want to put it
Sort of.
closer. I'm gonna have to fix my camera when I do this. Oh, cool. Now you just won't do it, huh? Really?
I got a
You just
big
don't want it?
green one.
Well, there you can kind of see it in there somewhere. There's like little red spots in there. It doesn't want to focus on it because, of course,
I'm just
not.
using my metal one as always.
Oh, I've got the same one
You
as
got to
that,
use a
lucky.
different dice every time. What are you talking about?
Are they exactly the same?
I think yours are blacker on the inside parts of the in
Yeah, I
between
think
the
we-
copper.
Had this
That makes sense,
discussion
suits my soul.
last time. Rolling.
All right,
All right, let's go.
That's all right. It's not amazing. 12.
15. Hey,
Great. Okay. Have fun, Cal. Introduce
Alright,
us
Min.
to some of your video games.
Why is it
that
always
can
you,
think
Cal?
of.
mini
Because Cal
games.
cheats. He just really wants to talk.
I actually would prefer to roll low, honestly.
Yeah, nah,
Um,
it's a lie.
Hang on.
Bless you.
Just dying a bit. Mini games. Well, I don't really know. I think I have a love-hate with mini games. Some games I think they're awful, and some games I feel like are almost built off them in a way. So something I was thinking about when I was when I was
You
trying
were
to think of-
Jesus.
when I was
You've
Jesus.
made it. Finally.
When I was trying to think of what to talk about, it occurred to me that a lot of the games I grew up with, like the collectathon kind of games, so Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, that kind of thing, they'd have, a number of stars or jiggies or whatever the thing is you're getting, and the objective would almost always be some sort of trial or mini game in order to get that thing. And like, for example, in Mario, you race Cooper the Quick. In Banjo, the thing where you ground pound the turtles and they sing, for example, and you got to remember which order to do it in.
Yeah, like the puzzle mini games, which
Yeah,
are everything
yeah.
in existence.
So like, I feel like I don't know if they count as mini games as such, but a lot of the game is based around those kind of little things that you have to do.
I think it
And I've always-
kind of counts. Like
Kind of counts, but it's
it's a variation on the main gameplay to be used as a mini game, which I think is a good way to balance it
Yeah.
because it doesn't change up so
Yeah.
much that you have to be like, oh, this is just completely different. Let me figure this out. But
And
it's also a
so-
new experience with what
yeah.
you're familiar with.
And-
it works.
Yeah, and I do actually think that that's a good point about mini games. Is that where actually is the line with them? Is are the when you're flying a banshee, is that the thing you fly? I think it's the thing you fly in Halo.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a mini game because there's a whole level that you got to do by flying around, but you're still like you always kind of drive vehicles in it and you can get in and out. So I would argue no, but it's like at the same time is is that where you've got to do regular gameplay but in a really specific pattern or something like that to kind of solve
Yeah.
something? Is that a mini game? I'm actually not totally sure.
I don't know either, but I was trying to think of an example of where I think mini games are cool, and I think that works. Is you don't realize that you're doing a
Yeah,
mini game.
it's balanced well, yeah.
And
It's
then I
actually-
think of times where I think they suck. And for me, every mini game basically in Kingdom Hearts 2 sucks.
Dude, how
I
good's
like the gummy
Atlantis
shit.
though? Atlantis is great.
They're probably the best ones in it, and they're like
Atlantis is not great.
They
There's
don't
nothing
even.
good.
no,
They're
I
not
mean like
timed. It's like-
yeah, they're a little bit out of time with the music, but
No.
like the Winnie the Pooh ones, I never liked those. I found them like tedious and not fun, and just did them for the sake of having to complete Jiminy's journal.
I would tend to agree, but I also really love Winnie the Pooh. So fuck you. You're
Hey,
right.
I love Winnie the Pooh as much as the next guy, but yeah, I don't know. Those are just two examples. Like that's where I think they're cool, where
Yeah.
they kind of suit the game, and then the other ones they are like you do. I feel like I do them because I want to complete it rather than
Have
Yeah.
fun when
enjoy
you get around.
doing it. Yeah.
Have fun when you get around to KH3 then.
I still think Birth by Sleep is the worst thing.
So
that
I
could ever
guess
be
another
experienced.
thing where I could say in Kingdom Hearts defense, like if you count, I guess the Colosseum, that's cool. That's a mini game kind of in a way, but yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the same deal there, where it's like I would argue that it's only really a mini game if you have to completely learn new mechanics for it.
Yeah.
If they're just an extension of the game mechanics with like a few rules slapped on, like the Colosseum or the arenas in Ratchet and Clank, or like there's time trials in Uncharted in the re-releases, you can, you know, that you have to try and do every level in a
You have
certain
to get
time,
the
and
platinum relics in every level, and
Oh,
then you
that's
can unlock
trash.
the secret ending. It's a Naughty Dog game. That's how it works.
Well, actually, that actually is something I was about to bring up, which was actually something interesting. So Naughty Dog, to me, are really interesting because having come from Crash and then going on to The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last of Us, where so, you know, such a, you know, massive change in tone and gameplay design and everything. But I actually think one of the really interesting things, and something in defense of minigames, to an extent, minigames done well, is I think Naughty Dog's experience making the Collectathon game, or the Collectathon style game, is one of the reasons why the gameplay loop of their games is always so satisfying, even though their gameplay is not great. Because what they tend to do is actually do a really good job of changing up the standard gameplay in some way. So you have the bit where you're hanging upside down in The Last of Us Part 1. You have lots of bits where suddenly you're in a car, like on a turret in Uncharted, or you're fighting and the levels falling apart around you, and they do a really good job of kind of using environmental features or gameplay features or enemies or whatever to change up the core loop, which to me I think comes from that tradition that you're talking about of like taking the normal
Yeah.
gameplay and mini gamifying it,
And
and
you
it
try to-
actually yeah
you see that in Jack and Daxter as well, which is sort
Yep.
of the bridge between what you're talking about. Like, you know,
Yeah.
to get these precursors, you do this, and this, and that kind of thing.
yeah
Do you still have the fishing in that game though?
Every
The
game
run
needs
killer.
a fish. I love the fishing mini game.
that's because you're not a
Darn it.
speedrunner.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you darn if
Yeah.
you're a speedrunner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think as well, like for me, mini games are, I kind of hate them. Like that's probably where I generally sit on the whole, and I think that's largely because, actually, I think being more specific, they're very game dependent. So in collectathons and things like that, I'm pretty okay with them.
Yeah.
In Final Fantasy, they can go and die in a hole.
This is so stupid.
Hey man,
Yeah.
what about doing squats?
Actually, sorry,
Chin-ups.
no, you're right. So sorry, the remake, I actually did enjoy the minigames. I will.
I
will
liked
admit
them
that.
too. Yeah,
Yeah, the remake,
I
Yep.
found the chin ups really frustrating. Or I think one of the workout ones took me
Yeah, yeah.
ages to do.
Yeah, but like, you know, the box bash one. The thing that I found
That
with
was
all
cool.
of them was that they were sufficiently challenging to perfect without being a pain in the ass.
I'm amazed
And they were
kept
fun.
them.
Like they
What's
were
that?
fun.
I'm amazed that they kept them. I really thought they would have just gotten rid of them.
It's a mostly, let's not get into that, mostly very faithful remake. And that includes, it's got many of the old mini games. It's got
Yeah.
all of the some of the old dialogue and everything. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's but yeah, no, like the squats are done much better. Like you actually have to get the timing right, and the thing eventually disappears, so you actually can't see it, and you just have to go off the timing of his movements to press it, and that sort of thing. But it's not so hard that you have to like be amazing at it to get everything you needed to get. You know what I mean? Like to get the top score, you don't have to be perfect because it's only a little bit of the game. So I think the one of them took me like 40 minutes, and I think that was the longest that a mini game took me.
Yeah, the hardest one for me, I think, was the chin ups. Is that where you play as Tifa?
Yeah.
That one really screwed me. But
Yeah.
I still think the original mini games are just the best thing ever. They're just so dumb. The CPR alone made my head want to explode, and then it's immediately and you have to try to figure out which one it is, and then it's immediately followed by the dolphin jump, and I'm like, kill me.
And then not long after, followed by the saluting and the marching and like it's just like a chain of mini games. It's so bad.
That section of the game just made me to punch myself in the skull. Like, what's happening?
And from memory, it doesn't tell you what buttons to press in the salute. So you're just like, what am I doing?
I think it does.
It teaches you which one is which, and then gives you like 15 minutes to forget.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you see them all do it, and I was just doing all the wrong stuff. When I did it.
Yeah. But I think you can fail it, can't you? And it just keeps going. I feel like you can, but I can't.
You can fail it, yes. But I think from memory, there's like I don't know if they're missable, but you get rewards for.
I don't think I've succeeded it.
Actually doing it well, and I'm pretty sure they're actually fairly substantial rewards too.
Yeah, but I think if you fail,
knowing
it's
them,
just
yes.
like sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, it doesn't like cut you off if you fail. It's just like, yeah.
Thank God, because oh my God.
Yeah, but then like the Fort Condor.
Yeah, the strategy mini game.
Yeah, where I started out like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do all of them. There's like 40 times you have to go and do that. It's like in between every single mission, there's at least one attack you've got to thwart, and it costs you your in-game money. So it's like
I never bothered with that. I did it a couple of times and like, just play the story.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of my feeling with like Final Fantasy VII's mini games was like the casino was fun because there was a logical reason there were mini games there.
Yeah.
The rest was like, I don't need to give CPR. Just let Cloud do it. He can do it. I can't. Let him do it.
Yeah. I did enjoy the motorbike, but I think half of that was just because it was a cool moment.
And that was again in the remake, the motorbike was pretty fun, though on the hardest.
I think it was a lot more. Grueling. They did a lot more in that game, didn't they?
There's
a few times,
two uses of the motorbike in it.
Still technically double.
I think it's a longer segment too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool, but it's just so much nonsense. It's funny that the two games that come in mind where I'm like, I want to die with mini games are both Square.
They're good at it.
Both Final Fantasy games in a way. And it's like, they're good at it.
They're good at making you want to die through mini games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Chocobo racing in FF10. No.
No, how dare you? No, you wash your mouth out with soap, young man.
I don't think I ever did Chocobo racing in FF10.
Oh, it's so bad. The thing doesn't want to walk in a straight line. And to beat it, you have to complete it in 0 seconds. Because you like gain time from collecting flags or something. So you have to
like platinum relics.
You have to have a perfect run and collect everything. And it like you're not controlling the way it moves. It like moves and you just push it one way or the other and it kind of angles hard that way. And it was just awful. It was just so bad.
Because like I think the controls in that game are mapped to a D-pad. Have you noticed that he only moves forward and then 45 and then 90 degrees? No matter like there's no actual fluid circular.
But that was PS2, wasn't it? FF10?
Yeah, very, very early. They probably were just using, I reckon they were using a D-pad to do that. Because the way he moves is really unnatural for a joystick. This is just my assumption. I have no actual facts to back this up with. But
yeah. I have a question for the both of you. What do you think is the most infamous kind of minigame?
Fishing. Like fishing's in so many games.
It's a good one. There's one specifically that just came to mind, which I never thought about as a mini game, but it's very obviously a mini game.
Racing.
You could call it an interactive cutscene.
Boss battle.
QuickTime events.
Ah.
The mini game that ended up in everything. I never really thought of it specifically as a mini game because it is just basically playing through a cutscene, but it's a mini game and it was used in pretty much everything for a while. And it's just interesting because I was thinking about how like the PS1, PS2 era was just like, okay, we need different ways for this game to be fun. Let's just throw mini games at it. Like that was a real thing from late PS1 to early PS2. And then I was thinking about the PS2 games that had it, and I was like, oh yeah, God of War had like the QuickTime events. I'm like, QuickTime events? It's interesting how popular, I think, QuickTime events ended up being, that it was just in everything.
Yeah, that is. I think the thing about QuickTime events that are, because I mean, in essence, like even the squats and the things like that. In essence, they're just QuickTime events. In essence, mini games are kind of just QuickTime events. But I think the thing that kind of, so like the fact that they were able to build entire games off them, like Detroit and what was that one? It's actually like a combat game. Wet. And there's a few games that have basically been entirely built off QuickTime events. I think it's just
all the Telltale games are like that.
Yeah. So I think it's just the fact that like because it's not the point of them is not the gameplay when you're doing a QuickTime event. The point of them is the scene.
Yeah.
The story being told. So it doesn't feel as frustrating as a mini game does, where it feels like the point is the gameplay. And that's like, you know, I just remembered, sorry, the chocobo thing is because birds fly at you and you're racing someone and the birds try to hit you and you have to dodge them, but you can't sidestep. So you kind of like go and awkwardly run that way as this bird flies at you. And the trainer that you're racing against is a freaking genius. They dodge everything. They're like, and you're just like, ah!
Because they see the code in the Matrix.
It's so bad. I hate it so much.
Nah, it sounds like fun to me. You haven't experienced like Sonic 06 snowboarding or just Sonic 06, I guess.
But you need to do it to get an important item as well, which is the other thing about like all the Final Fantasy mini games. That one of the big issues I see with all of them is that they gate like, how do you get this person's ultimate weapon? You do a dumb mini game.
There's some blitzball.
Yeah. Not just some. You want to get Walker's ultimate weapon. You've got to play so much blitzball.
But on the flip side, I do like games that just give you a bullshit difficulty mini game and then give you nothing for it. Like I remember playing on the hardest difficulty, beating all three of the kids on the beach in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
On whatever the hardest mode was in that. I think Final Mix was the hardest one in that, rather than Proud, or is that just
no? It's so the first one is Proud.
Proud.
And then the second one added Critical.
Yeah. So beating the three of them on Proud, I was like, I want to die, and then I did it, and it gave me a potion. It was like, cool, good. I'm glad I spent so much time on that. This is great news.
I used all my potions in those battles.
Yeah. I remember
it was ridiculous.
I remember as a kid trying so hard to beat Riku that our score ended up being like 45-1, and I was convinced that like the game was going to change and Kyrie was going to fall in love with him instead of me. So awesome. I was like, oh no, I've lost Kyrie. I remember
Cal saying something similar. Was like he always wondered if it mattered if you had more points or not.
Yeah, and
I remember doing it, and like the first time I properly played that game, I was 20 something. Yeah. And I managed to beat him on my first try and Proud. I'm like, get fuck you, I'm the best. And then the game got a lot harder. I was like,
yeah.
I got too proud too quick.
We've neglected to mention possibly the worst one though, the lightning dodge in Final Fantasy X.
How many is it in a row? Is it 1,000?
I think it's 100. Yes. 1,000 would just be cruel.
I remember you mentioning that. Yeah, that was my was our.
It's 200.
200. Yeah.
I
think I get to 10 and get hit and go, no, I'm not doing that again.
I got to 82 and then And that was when I was trying to 100% the game, and then I got hit. And I think that, in fact, that was what made me quit and play something else. I was trying to 100% the game, like I'd beaten it, and I was going off trying to collect everything. I'm like, all right, I need to get this out of the way, so I've got the worst thing done first, so that I go and try to do it, get hit at 18. I'm like, no, fuck this, and just play the new game.
Apparently, there's a worse one. I think in 9 or 8 than the lightning dodge. I can't remember what it is, but there's always one real bullshit thing in a Final Fantasy game that you just can't do.
Yeah.
This was our comparison of Wind Waker against Orca. We had to get like 500 or 1,000 hits on him, and he can only at 1,000 hits on Orca, and you hit him maybe like 2 or 3 times every 5 to 10 seconds, and the whole time you have to hold that aim button. And it literally asks you at the end when you beat him, when you get 1,000, it says, "Is your left index finger sore or something?" And it's like, yes, it is. I've been holding this thing down for like an hour, and that's alone if you don't mess it up. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So Zelda actually brings another thing too. With I was talking about this with Nat before because she asked what we were going to discuss tonight, and it didn't surprise me at all. Because like mini games, she says, "Oh, I love mini games." I'm like, "Oh my god," not surprised at all. But she used Zelda as an example. So you go into a town where it's logical to have something like a shooting gallery, and you can win more arrows for doing that. Stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that is pretty cool. And then she said Gwent in The Witcher, which I haven't played, but she loves that.
No. Sorry, The Witcher's in Gwent. You got it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess like those situational things where, if you go into a town, there's going to be something like a bowling alley or, a shooting gallery or something like that.
It was just kind of commonplace in Zelda. It's weird to not have it.
See, that's what sort of what I was getting at with Final Fantasy VII before as well. Like for me, the what's it called? The Gold Saucer. In FF7, I had no issues with the mini games in the Gold Saucer because you're in a casino. That's what it should be. It should be mini games, and it makes sense that there's some cool rewards you can get there too, and it's expensive to play there. And it actually was quite satisfying when I came back and was able to actually pay for the super ticket. That means you're allowed to go there whenever you want forever. It was like a really nicely kind of paced. It fit the world that the casino was expensive as hell. It was really nicely paced that it the mini games felt worth doing and weren't too hard, but like some of them were too hard. I take that back, but get the point. Like they were quick, they were only semi necessary, and they were a bit of fun and a bit of a diversion from the main game. But then the things like the CPR and the salute and that sort of thing, those mini games where it's like they get in the way of the story or they gate important items behind them. That's kind of, I think, where I have issues.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
I still just love and fondly and not so fondly just remember, as I was saying, the late PS1, early PS2 era of just like, all right, time to change the pace up. Mini games. Because if you play I love comparing the Crash games and the Spyro games just because that's where my childhood is. If you play the first Crash game, the mini games are basically the hog wild thing where you ride the hog through the level, and that's basically it. Maybe running away from the boulder, but that's still just the mechanics of the game. It's just forcing you to keep moving. Other than that, and then boss battles, I guess. Boss battles are always a weird form of mini game. And then Crash 2, I think, only introduced the jet ski thing. No, it had the jetpack as well, which controlled like
oh my god,
absolute hell. The worst thing ever. It sucked. And then Crash 3, it had motorbikes. It had the tiger, which was basically the polar bear, which was basically the warthog. It had the spaceship boss battle that Coco has. In my head, it has the flying in a plane one, but I might be thinking of Crash 4. I feel like that's Crash 3. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is Crash 3. And just kept adding him and adding him and adding him. And it's like, man, it's weird watching this game go on. And then Spyro is just so much worse. Like a lot of people just like, whilst most people remember all 3 games as being really good, there's a good amount of people who don't like the 3rd game because it's 80% mini games.
Yeah.
It's like, as I was saying this after our session not last week, 2 days ago, there you play as Spyro, Hunter, Sparks, and Hunter is different gameplay every time you play as him. Sergeant Bird, Bentley, Agent 9, Sheila, and I think that's it. And then Spyro also has to ride in a spaceship. There's like escort missions. There's like first-person shooters that are on rails, and then there's a Doom mini game when you're playing as Agent 9. There's the power-ups. So there's one where Spyro flies and shoots, and then there's the speedways, and there's the races in the speedways, and it's like, oh my god. Like, I just listed so many things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's stuff that I'm missing, and it's like, where did this come from? And then we were talking also about like Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, I was just
First
about to bring that up.
one, I think the first one really just had puzzles. The only mini game, so to
Hoverboarding.
speak. There was actually more than I thought. There was the hoverboarding. There was the Clank missions. I forgot about the Clank missions.
Yeah,
It was
those
like
are
a whole different style of gameplay. There was
Yeah, I
one
suppose-
puzzle thing, and then it was mostly like taking the water out of the stuff, like those kind of puzzles, which are a bit different.
one thing I was going to bring up as you were mentioning Spyro, which is also applicable there with Ratchet and Clank, is I feel like playing as different characters, it's debatable whether that's a mini game or not, depending on the character. So like, for example, the Sergeant Bird mini games in
Hero's Tale, they are literally speedways. That's what they are.
Yes, so that's very clearly a mini game. Whereas the Clank missions, it's actually still the same gameplay. It's just you have very little health, and instead of a wrench, you punch, and you lose a lot of your tools. And you occasionally get different
robots
tools.
is the part that makes it feel more like a minigame to me. Whilst I would agree that it's probably not enough to full on consider it a minigame, I still feel it still feels like one to me.
Yeah.
Just because it's very short sections that usually they don't last for very long. I think they kind of tried to extend it a bit in 2. And I don't even remember if it's in 3. Is it in 3?
Yeah. It is.
Yes, because Agent Clank. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time, isn't it? No, that's still wrong because there's a. I don't know.
I think there's a couple of times. I think there's twice you do it, and then there's one giant Clank, which as a kid I remember loving. And on my replay through this time, I'm like, why did I love this? This is so bad. But the thing I suppose the thing I'm getting at is it still felt like it's pretty much the same gameplay to me. So whereas I would consider, I think the Trespasser was in Ratchet 1.
I can never remember which one is which. There's Trespasser, there's Infiltrator.
Whatever the hacking item was in Ratchet 1.
I think there's one in each game. I think one it was... I can't remember what it was in
spoke the
one.
other day with the little lines that you have to connect up.
In 2, it was the dots that move in, and you have to make sure they don't hit walls by pressing a button to flip them. In 3, it was the orb, where you had to find point A to point B. And for the life of me, I can't remember what you do in the first one.
It is the Trespasser.
Yeah, I just can't remember
it's like
what it
these
is.
light beams, and there's heaps of them around a circle, and you got to connect them to where they need to go in a certain
you and
way.
I
So there's a sending part and a receiving part, and you got to line the beam of light to get in. I think something like that.
It's got like discs that rotate, and they all shoot out beams. It's not that. Yeah, so there's like a bunch of receivers on the outside, and you got to try and get the beams into them, and then there's like bits in the way. So you're rotating different rings to shoot the beams and avoid hitting each other.
Yes, now I remember. The way you were describing it was like, what the hell are you talking about? Now I understand.
It's
It's
actually
over a
surprisingly
green
difficult to
thing.
explain.
Yeah, it has this, you have to get all of them to go, because it's the ring, they've all got activation switches, the lasers have to hit them, but there are also walls, so you have to spin every layer, so the lasers are hitting the beam, the beams are hitting the points, but they're not blocked off.
Yeah,
Yes,
to me though,
I
those were fun. I actually enjoyed the Trespasser puzzles. I did not.
Because they're puzzles.
Yeah, I liked them. Yeah.
Puzzles, I think, just in general, are typically interesting enough to make them a little bit more enjoyable, unless they're just bullshit.
And they were fairly short. Like the thing that was good that Ratchet I think has always done pretty well, aside from in Ratchet and Clank 2, I think the thing that's nice that Ratchet and Clank always kind of did pretty well was that the mini games, whilst you had to do them to progress a level a couple of times, like arguably the Hollow Guys, I guess, was kind of a mini game too. But while you had to do them a couple of times, generally the hardest takes on that mini game would always just be to get a platinum bolt or a gold bolt in the case of the first game, or that sort of thing, where it's like you just had to complete the game. You didn't have to be really good at the mini game, and they normally weren't too hard anyway. So I think like the first one, there was a few, but none of them felt out of place. It was cool to have a hacking mini game, and it kind of felt like they were all there for a purpose. The second one,
I would disagree only about the hoverboard. That one was like, okay, this is a big shift. Yeah. Other than that, I would agree. Yeah.
Yes, the hoverboard was probably unnecessary, though. It was in character for Ratchet to be really into that. So
yeah, I just mean from a gameplay point of view, it was like, this is interesting.
How much do you reckon Tony Hawk's Pro Skater had an influence there with heaps of games
it had an influence on every game that had any kind of boarding. Yeah. Like literally, that's what I forgot to say. Spyro 3 had a skateboarding video games.
Yeah, we did a video because of that.
Yeah. I forgot all about that, and yeah, we did a video on it.
Yeah,
it's so dumb. Like a dragon skateboarding is just the most ridiculous thing.
Awesome though. I love that game. I legitimately do. It's stupid, but I love it. It's still a good game. It's just got so much.
Yeah. But yeah, so like the thing that you were bringing up, where to me, replaying the series recently, Ratchet 2 just...
It's got a lot.
And they felt like what they did was it was like when you got to one, you could get through all of the stages of the minigame in that location in a row. So it really ruined the pacing of the level, because if you were being like wanting to sort of do everything you can, which, like I'm a completionist, I'm always looking to complete everything that's in front of me. And you're looking at a menu that it's like, oh, you got to complete one race to progress the level. I'm not going to complete that one race and progress the level. I'm going to complete all 10 they offer. And that means that you often you'd be doing a level and you're like, oh, this is cool, this is fun. And then you complete the thing, you get the thing you need, and it's like, oh no, Metropolis, wrong game, but whatever, is under attack. We've got to race to there as fast as we can. But first I'm going to do eight hoverbike races.
Metropolis?
No, they're in a different galaxy in 2.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying now.
I need to replay those games.
The issue for me mostly, honestly, I think the biggest thing for me was the racing, because the laser thing minigame wasn't really much different from Ratchet and Clank 1. But the racing I had an issue with, because the first time it's like, yeah, it's okay, it's fun. I probably enjoyed it more than the hoverboard because it's fast paced and it's kind of exhilarating.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's 10 races on the same track that just open shortcuts.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if it
adds
was
weapons,
10, but
and it's
lot.
like,
yeah,
why though?
Yeah, and I think the thing for me with those as well was like there were 2 worlds with them in Ratchet 1, but I think you only had to win 3 times, or not even that. It was like you to get everything from it, you just needed to get a really good time or something. I can't remember, but you didn't need to do it that much. Whereas the hover bike in Ratchet 2, it was I felt like I had to do it so many times. And then the spaceship ones as well, where it's the
spaceship could have been better.
It's not just for me. It's about the pacing. I think a lot of the time, we get there and it's we've got the coordinates to the next world. Let's get going. But first, I'm going to race the galaxy's greatest racer.
You don't have to
I beat every single time.
You don't have to do that.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's to do with the delivery there.
Yes, but I will say in the argument of pacing, I find it hard to judge pacing when it's an optional do everything. If it's one mission, when it comes to things okay, we're going to this planet, wait, here's the thing, we have to destroy 20 enemies. That's where a point where I'm like, okay, I see that it's a problem with pacing. But in that game, you can literally upgrade your ship and then come back and do it. So it's that's where true. I'm like, okay, pacing, I don't see much of an issue, but I just don't think it's very I don't think it's fun enough to warrant existing.
There's also 3 of them.
Yeah. And the third one is like just a big, not the third one. The second one is just a big orb.
Yep.
And it's like,
There might even be
why?
4 of them, but I think it's only 3.
Don't think there's 4. I feel like there's
yeah.
3. There's the prison ship, there's the big orb thing, and then there's a bunch of asteroids. I did like that first one. I thought that one was cool for
there's also the cloud one then. So there is 4.
Cloud one.
Yeah. So it's like, I think it might be in the atmosphere, and there's actually like there's the ghost ship that flies around.
That's the that's the prison ship one. It's the same thing.
Is it?
Because it's literally, it's not, maybe not prison ship, but that's the thugs for less. You're literally trying to shoot them down.
Yeah.
It is the same one, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's the point anyway is that like whilst I understand what you're saying, I think the thing for me with those, and yes, I know it was like me doing it to myself, but the way it happens as well is you complete the first one, and then cutscene happens, and then what pops up on the screen is the next mission. And you actually have to actively like exit out of the mission to not do the next mission. You don't like it's there to be clicked. You know what I mean? The game is built to make you want to do the next one. Which for me, I think was the big thing. Was like I just felt like, oh god, there's so many of these. I just want to play Ratchet and Clank, not racing. But it's so I think that's, you know, in this whole discussion about mini games, that's actually where the big thing is. If it gets to the point where you start to feel like you're not playing Ratchet and Clank, you're playing mini games, it starts to detract from it for me, unless, like you said before, Cal, it's a game that actually is built off the mini game, like Wii Sports.
Such a good game.
It is, yeah.
It's like the only reason to play to want to play with a Wiimote. Hit 10.
I feel like it's really not a good game, but I feel like we all enjoy it anyway.
I know, it's great. It's fun.
Yeah, I think like
I know what you're talking about.
On paper, it's a pretty average game, but it's fun. So
yeah,
that's all it needs
like
to
I
be.
said, Nintendo do stupid gimmicks, but with the exception of the Wii U, they make it work. Like they do well. Well, work is probably very generous. They do well of making the gimmick fun, but work is the wrong word, because then you play games like you play things where you have to point at the screen, like trying to play an old Mario Party game. It's like, okay, draw this shape. Sure. I'm just holding still, man. That's when it's like.
I remember like being so excited to get Metroid Prime on the Wii. It's like you get to aim the actual gun, and you know Samus's gun's on her arm too, so it'll feel appropriate. Oh my god, it's so hard to do anything. It's just like, oh no, I've got to shoot an enemy.
Yeah,
I really want to play the Primes. A lot of people have suggested them to me.
Yeah,
I love them.
They are so lucky that they added the bloody Wii Motion Plus before Skyward Sword came out. Imagine trying to play that game with the fucking
it Link's still running around like that most of the time.
Yeah, because you naturally hold the controller up a bit. No one plays like that because it hurts your wrists. So, so Link runs around with his sword in the air going, it's really funny. It's great.
I couldn't play Twilight on the Wii, not just because of how much I didn't like that. Like I just prefer the controller, but it was mirror image to the GameCube, so I hopped on and everything was back to front.
Well, I don't know that there's any real reason. Honestly, other than for the mirroring, I don't know why anyone would want to play it on a different console. I don't even think the graphics are any different. I think it's the same on both versions. I'm probably wrong, but I don't remember them
looking any different.
No. I never played the GameCube copy. You gave it to me, but it was on my list, and I got distracted by something else.
Oh,
but
good game.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite Zelda. We'll go into that one day, but
eventually, you just gotta get Lockie to play him.
What?
We gotta strap him to a chair.
When we stream a randomizer, Lockie can play.
That'll be the worst context for it, though. So how come you went into this dungeon and you found the Master Sword?
How come
I
the
mean-
ice cabin was in a volcano?
I don't. Zelda randomizer is such a foreign concept to me. It just
Oh,
doesn't
no,
even
it's
seem like it's,
amazing.
It is
It's
amazing.
pretty great.
I'm dying to play it actually.
The only thing is that I don't think it's for the faint of heart because, like, you need to know where everything is. It's one of those things where I feel like if you don't know where everything is, you need to play with a guide, or else you're just gonna get stuck because
Yeah,
it
I'd have
literally
to play.
randomizes where every item is. So
Right.
like, and also there are 100 hidden golden sculptures, I think, everywhere.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So like one of those, they always drop a gold sculpture token. One of those could be a sword, like an item you need to beat the game. You don't know.
Like there's just hundreds and hundreds of possibilities, and because Zelda is like every item is basically something that you need to get to progress through the game, so you can't reach the next dungeon till you've got this item. So you have to do the game in real weird ways. I'd have to play it with a guide because I don't know where everything is.
I think if you'd asked me to play it a month and a half ago, I probably could have gotten through it because I remembered where a lot of it was from doing the 100% run. But now, probably not.
And
I
I'd
think
have to
that
do
sounds like-
glitchless as well because like a lot of the pros will just clip through walls and stuff to get where they need to go. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I think that sounds worse than the normal game.
Oh yeah, it is. Oh, now I'm all fuzzy. What's going on there?
Welcome to my life. I really
Well,
hope
I'm
that
perfect, guys. Just look at my face instead.
I really hope that it fixes
Whoa.
for you and you don't have to turn your camera off, because if you do, then I have to edit, and I really don't want to edit.
How do you normally fix yours, Jack? Point it
By
away.
making the lighting shift. So like point it at something else, or even just, oh, that could do it.
Or make it worse?
It did nothing.
It
I
didn't.
usually try it just by focusing on something closer, like pointing it up, pointing it down.
Oh,
Oh, there
it's
you go.
back,
There you
you're
go.
There we go.
Thank God, I don't have to edit anything.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think like I sort of brought up before, Naughty Dog development stuff, and I actually remembered something when you were talking about boss battles in Crash Bandicoot.
Crash.
Naughty Dog actually does that in Uncharted as well, and to an extent in The Last of Us. They kept the same method of having boss battles be basically a mini game, which is actually kind of interesting. I'd never really thought about it, and it's like you can see a lot of that D&D. You can tell what my mind is normally focused on. That DNA in those games that I hadn't really noticed.
I want to do that.
DNA Beyond. But yeah, so like I think it like, yeah, there's the final boss in Uncharted 4. It's like it's a fencing duel.
Hmm.
And you've never fought with a sword before that point in the game.
Yeah.
And it is that, and one of the trophies is for not getting hit.
In fairness, I think in a game like Uncharted, where everyone is a human being who can use a gun, how do you make a boss battle?
Yeah, well, yes. And there's no, they tend to do it like they make chunky enemies by covering them in armor.
Yeah, because in real life, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, although it would not work this well. My God,
Yeah.
Uncharted gets bullet spongy on high difficulties.
Good.
But yeah,
you shoot him in the eyeball, it takes off a pixel of health.
yeah, it gets a bit like that. It's like, oh, look, the armor takes 15 bullets to shatter now. But yeah, no, so it's like, but it's interesting that even The Last of Us kind of did that. Like what's his name? David in The Last of Us 1 with the sneaking around thing. It's just kind of an extension of the main game, but you're playing as Ellie. You have to play in a very specific way in order to beat him. And then there's a boss battle in part 2 that's actually very much the same as the David fight. It's kind of interesting that because I never really played Crash that much. Like I played it as a little kid, but I didn't play it once I was old enough to remember the game. Beyond the Great Wall of China was in it, and I think Tigers. I think I must have played the third one.
That was the third one.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
literally
Great Wall.
Yeah. In all 3 games, there's a ride an animal to the end of the level. In Crash 1, it's a warthog. In Crash 2, it's a polar bear. In Crash 3, it's a tiger.
Yeah.
And you play
So
as Coco.
I think I must have played Crash 3 as a kid then. That must be the one I'm remembering.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's like, it's interesting that I'd never sort of, until you started bringing that up, I'm like, actually, they've kind of kept the same, which is weird to me to think in games which are so much more adult. Weird to me to think that they kept so much of that DNA, but it makes sense.
Well, I think that's a lot of the thing of making boss battles interesting is to just change up your formula or introduce a new one. Because again, in real life, it's like, oh, this big confrontation with my sworn enemy. He is literally no different from the 50,000 soldiers I've had to fight in this game because
it's about the
human beings
emotional
aren't that
impact
different.
in the real world.
So they have to make it interesting in one way or another, either by making it like a cutscene based thing or making the surroundings part of it or pauses for dialogue, etc., etc., etc. But I don't know. It's just fun to think that typically boss battles are puzzles or mini games. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Hey, Cal, what's the rule of a boss battle? There's one important rule. Do you know?
You hit them 3 times.
Yeah,
and
the
they
rule
die.
of 3. Well done. Good job, Cal. I knew I could rely on you. It's called the rule of 3. It's in everything.
If it's part of the conversation, I actually generally don't enjoy boss battles in any game because they feel a bit jarring and like a mini game to me.
Then you haven't played good ones.
Just
Bluntly.
like I feel like when I get to a boss, like, oh damn it, now I have to do this. I want to do something else. Like I just don't really enjoy them.
But what games have you played with boss fights?
I guess we'll go
You're
back to
asking
Kingdom.
someone who played Nintendo 64. Every
that's
game
what
he's ever played has boss fights.
But that's actually exactly what I'm bringing up.
Oh,
Boss
okay.
fights in old games are very different from modern boss fights. Very different.
It's actually more the modern ones that I dislike because
Then
okay, for example, Deus Ex, I didn't like any of the boss battles in that.
that's because they were developed by a different company.
Yeah,
Okay.
they weren't fun. The
That's
second one,
literally-
oh my god.
That's literally a known flaw with the base game, is that they outsourced the boss battles, and therefore it was a huge issue because we're talking about a game where it doesn't make you kill anyone ever. And
then
they
you have to
outsourced
kill
for
them.
that, and then you suddenly had to kill them, and that's why the director's cut of Deus Ex is better, because they actually made the boss battles themselves and patched them in.
Throw explosives at this guy. This chick's invisible, then shoot her or electrocute the ground. And then the third one is, if you stand on this platform, no one can hurt you. I remember reading a guide for that because I was like, man, I love this game, but I'm kind of over it. And it said, hey, you want to beat this boss battle? Just stand there. I'm like, okay. And it worked. And then I did it for reals, and I was like, this isn't fun. I'm just going to go back to standing on the platform.
So
no one can see you.
With the boss thing, I enjoy it in games like Zelda, that kind of thing where, yeah, I know, but you have to use your dungeon item and figure out how to defeat this thing.
Okay,
but just for sheer
fair.
combat, I don't really enjoy that any more than I enjoy just fighting enemies, wherever you may fight them otherwise.
I love it in Zelda most of the time too, because I do like, it's like, you've learnt to use this item, now use it to kill a boss. But I love that one of the most climactic fights in Ocarina of Time is a tennis match. It's so great.
Man, you are not encouraging me to play that game.
It's amazing. No, the end of that game is great, and the actual final battle is pretty cool. But there's 2 phases to it, and the first phase is hilarious. It's literally like Ganon's like, I'm gonna shoot this ball of energy, like Spirit Bomb style. He throws it at you, and then you hit it with your sword, and then he hits it back with his arm, and then you hit it with his sword.
So,
and that's in so many Zelda games.
I
that
like
battle.
The Zelda games, like they have problem solving elements. I mean, a good one is how you use the mirror shield in the Spirit Temple against the witches, and you reflect their stuff back at them. There's a little bit of trial and error, and like.
But I mean,
I enjoy the problem solving aspect of that.
I get that. I think the thing that I would say is that to me that's not a boss battle. that's a mini game, which is what you were saying. To me, what a good boss battle is when it basically takes the mechanics that you've been practicing as you've been playing the game and makes you have to dial them up to 11. So the entire Souls-like formula is built off that. So Fallen Order. Fallen Order, that's the whole thing with the bosses there. And yes, I know Jack has Fallen Order was too easy.
It was not a hard game. This is like, hey, dodge, you win.
Yeah, I didn't find that. I actually found
that
some
immediately
challenge in it.
because I killed that because I didn't realize that you came back to the planet to the big frog thing that everyone does. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to come back and do this. I'm just going to kill it now. And I did because I just rolled away from it and it could never hit me. I'm like, well, this is cool.
Yeah. So don't listen to Jack about Fallen Order. Play the game without dodging because it's much more fun. Just
play it
things.
Without one of the core mechanics of the game.
No, like parry attacks. It's much more fun. But anyway, the point is, like in games like Fallen Order or Dragon Age or Dark Souls or anything where there's like the gameplay and mastering the gameplay as a core aspect of the game. A good boss fight is a boss fight that goes, cool, so you've been kind of like playing around with this. Now here's an enemy that you have to parry 6 times in a row in order to not die. Or something like that. So it's like, it makes you take the mechanics you've been using and have to be way better at them.
That's fine, but that's literally what Zelda boss fights normally are. It's a lot of the time it is, here's the new mechanic, learn how to use it, now get really good at it and use it in a boss fight, as well as all these other mechanics. And also, it's a puzzle, which is what this game is.
When Kel described it at the start, I was like, no, then that's fair.
Yeah, it's just Ganon. That's a fucking tennis match.
Yeah, and it's really annoying because like you don't know to do that because you've always got a sword, and like so when you fight Phantom Ganon in Forest Temple, you get the bow and arrow, which is a big like element of what you use to kill him. But then when he starts throwing things at you, there's nothing that says hit it back with your sword.
Yeah, it's weird.
You can't do that to any other thing in the game.
It's very strange.
So long to figure that out as a kid.
It's a really weird boss battle.
I'm starting to have physical reactions to mentions of Zelda. So I think we might need to I either need to play this game or we need to
just get on with it.
Conversation. I'm sitting here like my stomach's tensing up. I'm like, I am so over this game.
I do enjoy boss battles in turnstile games because of the strategy aspect. So having to like FF10, for example. Like
it sounds like what you're saying is there's certain games where you prefer the gameplay is actually what it sounds like to me.
I think just anything that's more of like a hack and slash or something. I don't really love the bosses in those. I don't know. There's just something about them that I've never really liked because they don't feel. I guess I just prefer the other kind of bosses where you have to figure things out. There's something different. I guess.
Okay. So my suggestion is let's stop the boss conversation because I think we've stumbled into our topic for next week and it's almost been an hour.
It's also still a mini game, but yeah.
I know.
It could be a very long conversation about boss battles.
That's what I was about to say. So I think let's save the boss battle discussion for next week and kind of tag off our mini game into that. But I do think that actually is a good point. Like a mini game, like boss battles that feel like mini games. I agree. Like I never really liked the boss battles in the few platformers I did play and that sort of thing because of that. Like, you know, the ones where it's like, oh, they hit this platform, so don't stand there and then spin. You know, that's
Crash 1.
That's a Crash boss. Yeah.
Crash Bandicoot has some of the worst bosses, but again, I'll have plenty to say on that next time. So
yeah, Ripperoo.
Yeah. So to me, those are like those sorts of bosses. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. They feel like mini games, and I will say to your point that that spider thing, as much as that was a god awful, completely terrible, not interesting in any way boss, it is what you were saying. Like it was an extension of the mechanics you'd been learning. It's just
you're lucky we don't have a lot of fans.
No,
okay.
Some of them would agree with me.
In 10 years' time, you're going to pay for this.
No, I'm not. And you, come at me, you Zelda lovers. I will fight you all off with with my
Look, I don't want to need to find a new Game Boy. Please don't do that. But yeah, man, just like there's just so many games that I think the development of mini games is like where they started, where they went is just baffling to me. Like how once upon a time the game, like it took so much to get the game to work that mini games just weren't really a thing. And then they started
initially
to bring them in,
the games kind of were the mini game. Like Pong, for example, is just a mini game. Really, it doesn't qualify for a game.
But like I'm saying, if you play like Super Mario Brothers, the closest thing to a mini game in that is an auto scroller. Other than that, there's no real mini games in that. But then as they start to develop, they add more and more stuff. Like, hey, get all the red coins. Hey, get all of these. Like even collectibles in a game, to an extent, probably started off and became a main thing as mini games. It was like, hey, here's an extra thing that you can do, collect all these. Yes, they are the format of, it's a variation of the core game, but that's kind of what they had to start with, was like, how do we make this game different? Let's add like a mini game thing. In Mario 3, Cal, could you do the face-off where you play the original Mario Bros. Arcade game, or was that just the
I'm pretty sure you could do that
SNES?
in multiplayer. So if you both click on
Yes,
the
that's what I'm
same
talking
thing.
about.
Yeah, and I think I didn't know you could do that till we played recently, because I never had two controls for my Super Nintendo. I had one and you pass it back and forth.
I don't know if it was in the original game. I'm tempted to say that it wasn't, but for the life of me, I have no idea. But like, that's kind of one of those instances where I would have started to notice it. And I think as mini games just became more doable, they just kind of started, here's more, here's more, here's more, here's where we can change up our gameplay. And then when they started to realize that it started to just kind of break things up a bit and just became a bit jarring, which is kind of like peak of the end of PS1 era.
Yeah.
They started to slowly cut it down, but then some of the PS2 games were still doing it. And then QuickTime events kind of became a thing. And those just lasted until now, I guess.
Yeah.
It's still a thing.
I feel like QuickTime events are just kind of a better soft mini game is the thing. Like we were saying before, it's like if you don't want anything that's too crazy, everyone's done a QuickTime event before if you've played a game. So it's like you don't need a learning curve to learn how to do the mini game. So if all of a sudden, there's a button mash QTE or a one where you got to press buttons at the right time, nobody blinks an eyelid. They just do it. So it kind of was a way for them to keep that same thing of like, oh, you need to resuscitate this person, press triangle to blow in their mouth, and you'll have a meter that goes boom, or whatever, and it's like, okay, and then you got to mash square to whatever, it's like it's not a mini game anymore, really. It is, but it doesn't feel like one because it's just such an accepted mechanic now.
Yes, but I think it also depends very much on what game you're playing as to whether it works and is good. Because there's so many games where I'm like, oh, no more quick time. Just let me play the actual game. This sucks. It's bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch me kill this guy. I want to do it.
Hello, Kingdom Hearts 2. A little bit.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. We haven't talked about Mario Party. The game is
Mario
just
Party is literally. I actually had that thought because I was talking about the Wiimote and drawing things in Mario Party. But I think that's like, if you want to play a mini game, just play Mario Party. It's all.
I feel like that's actually. I feel like that's actually not a mini game. Like I think that's. I don't know if there's actually another word for it, but my point is that like that is what the game is. It's exactly.
It's an anthology.
Yeah, it's party games. Maybe that's like the right word for it. It's the same thing as Wii Sports or Wii Party and that sort of thing, where it's like, it's not you're playing one game and there's another weird little one that you got to do inside it. It's just like, that is what you're signing up for when you open the box. So, but yeah, I mean, look, what's our final verdict? Mini games, good or bad?
I love them. I don't care what anyone says. They're amazing and they're the best and they suck, but they suck in a brilliant way, except when they have achievements tied to them, then they can eat my bum. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, I'm looking at you. I'm never playing Fruit Ball again. Pete can die in a thing of fire.
I love that was what you found so hard. I hated the ice cream.
The ice cream was just stupid. Like it wasn't hard because rhythm games are hard. We're musicians.
Because it's just at the wrong time.
We're musicians. Rhythm games are very easy for us. But in that thing, the cue for hitting it is not on the beat. And it's like, why? Or there's a delay, and it's like, just work, man. It's like the whole point of rhythm games. And the newest Kingdom Hearts game is a rhythm game.
Yeah.
And then there's
Damn.
Atlantis, which is literally a musical QuickTime event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my short answer is minigames bad, with exceptions. I generally there's a baby crying in the background.
Yeah.
I generally think, yeah, it just depends on the game.
Yeah. Most of the time they suck. But
Yeah,
it's
or
just, I think there's such a charm to them at the same time. It's
there
just
is
such a
also
weird
like
thing.
that part of me that goes, I'm gonna beat this, and I'm gonna, like, when you find one that sets a ridiculously high thing that you need to achieve, like a really high score or something.
1,000 hits
Like
with a
Lockie said, you
sword.
can't progress with the game because you're stuck. Like, no, I have to beat this.
No, fuck you.
I
I'm
can't
getting
let
this
it
done.
beat me.
No,
Yeah.
Mom, I'm not going to bed. I need to hit this ball into the air 100,000 times. I'm looking at you, Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
And Kingdom Hearts 2 had the same thing with the keeping the ball up in the air.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think you have to do that very much in that game. I can't remember.
No, you don't.
And even
Yeah.
then, I don't think it's very hard.
Yeah,
No.
Mario Odyssey. I couldn't do that. I did do the skipping rope, which some people
No,
found harder,
that one you had to do it with the scooter to make it easier.
but I didn't know that. But I completely. I think that was when I stopped playing that game. I was gonna just get everything in it. Then I realized there was a ridiculous amount of moons, and then I couldn't do the volleyball thing, and I was like, "Oh, stuff it."
As good as Mario Odyssey is, I can't understand why those exist. Like, who in their right mind would want to do it that many times, let alone for one of the main collectibles in the game?
And then when they made it that you could just buy moons, so you could just buy your way to victory.
Yeah, I think that's I can't remember if that's late game or beat the game though, where you can get that option, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I haven't played in a long time.
Yeah. And I think my general feeling about minigames is actually a little bit more, I think a little bit more complex than binary yes or no. But on the whole, I think my comment would be no, minigames bad. And the main reason that I would say for that is I think the soft minigame approach that we were talking about, where you take the core gameplay and apply it in a slightly different context, to me, that is, if you want to change up the pacing of the game, change up the gameplay, give a bit of variation, that's the better way to do it. Minigames can be done well, but I think if you're needing to stuff your game full of minigames to fill out time or to make it more enjoyable, your core gameplay is not good enough. So work on that first.
Yeah.
I think in the case of Crash and Spyro, it was more that
Yes.
the formula was perfect and they didn't want to change it. So their way of making it not repetitive was by adding other stuff. Because honestly, there's not really, I couldn't tell you in the case of Crash and Spyro what they could have added to make those games better. I think they really just nailed it for how they played. So their answer was mini games.
Yeah, and that's understandable. That is understandable. I will.
It's just
I'll
3 had
concede
too
that.
many. 3 just
I
had way
actually
too
think,
many.
like, I disagree with you hard about Spyro, though. What they needed to add was co-op hack and slash.
Yeah. What they should have done was made the game about Agent 9, but given him a weapon to attack with, and
Yep.
maybe like a Sparks-like companion who had more impact on the gameplay. But I don't know. That doesn't sound like a very award-winning. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I don't think that's a successful idea. I'm glad that Insomniac made Jack and Daxter instead.
Oh man.
Those two companies are amazing. But they kind of just went down the same route for a while. I'm still waiting for the Carts of Us.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
Well, they need to do Last of Us 3 first.
Well, they also have to do Uncarded first.
Yes, I forgot about Uncharted. But they ruined that one by making Uncharted 4. It's bullshit.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
can you drive around in Uncharted 4?
Yes.
I think you can. Okay, close
There's
enough.
very extended driving sections in Uncharted 4.
Close enough. That's Uncharted.
Okay, cool. Uncharted 4 is Uncharted.
Uncharted and the Carts of Us are both great. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know who thought of. I'm sure multiple people thought of that joke, but it's really funny.
I kind of want Naughty Dog to make that just for the joke now.
wanna
don't even
see
bother
the,
making the game good. Just make them.
I want to see the clickers victory animation and the like, like the Mario Kart style thing when they get hit and they're like, ah, and when they pass an opponent and they're like, I want to see what their version of that is.
Okay, what they need to do is make it like Twisted Metal Black. So it's still an R-rated game, but it's a kart racer. So it's like the clickers victory animation is they leap out and just tear everyone's throats out.
Sick.
Just go really over the top violent.
And it's only fun for children to play.
Yeah.
It's a movie. Perfect.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
We need to talk about spin-off games at some point now.
Yeah.
That needs to be a conversation for soon.
Yeah. But I reckon, unless if someone gives us a good suggestion, I reckon bosses. Bosses, like our favorite bosses, why bosses are good and Cal is wrong, all those sorts of
They're
things.
not all bad, but I generally get to a boss, and I think it's because I deviate.
For next week, next week, Cal.
Hey,
I'll forget
Cal.
by then.
Cal,
I'll
hey, Cal.
forget.
Shut up.
So thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts on minigames. What are your favorite minigames? Your least favorite
really
minigames?
good at timing this.
Yeah. It's not at all because I've got a clock in front of me.
I'm watching the time.
But yeah, so let us know if you enjoyed this in the comments below. Leave a like and everything. And yeah.
Like and subscribe.
Do.
Please.
And hit the bell icon. We need those.
Yeah.
We need those.
Because that's a thing still.
Please.
We know how to YouTube.
But yeah, so yep, let us know if you want us to talk about anything in particular. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for hanging, dudes. Bye bye.
Apparently, this is our exit thing now. I'm just gonna do this every time.
Well, I can only do it with one hand because I've done the recording. Bye.
Do it with see ya.